Backyard Green Films is proud to present this episode of Agri-Culture with your host, Alara Bowman. Alara and her husband Rick travel throughout the land in their teardrop trailer that they have nicknamed Maggie, bringing you stories about their travels and the people they meet. They visit farmers, ranchers, and just about anyone who loves putting their hands in the dirt or their feet in stirrups. For the past 3 years, they have been filming a documentary about heritage breed animals entitled The Holstein Dilemma, Heritage Breeds, and the Need for Biodiversity. In those travels, they have gotten to meet some very interesting people. Here's one of those interviews.
Hi, this is Alara. Welcome back to our Agri-Culture podcast. Today, we're releasing the second half of our interview with Doug and Anna of Vilicus Farms in North Havre, Montana. Doug and Anna are dryland organic agronomists. That's an expert in crop production and soil management to you and I. They practice their science and art in a region that could be considered one of the last frontiers left in America. If you take the state of Montana, divide it in half east to west, and put a pin there in the middle, and then you go straight north to within about 8 miles of the Canadian border, that's them. Doug and Anna feel strongly about regenerative agriculture and stewardship. That's how the name of their farm originated. But the regeneration of the land is not the only area of importance to them. They've been implementing an internship program for the last 6 years, trying to find and train the next generation of pioneers. We thought you might find it interesting to hear from them on both the joys and pain of fostering growth, diversity, and the next, but not hopefully the last, generation of farming in America. Here are Doug and Anna.
Our vision isn't just diversity of cropping systems and more acres under an organic, more sane production system, but how do we actually have more people engaged in agriculture? What's the diversity in the community there? I mean, we're in a county that's classified frontier county. There's less than 5 people per square mile where we're farming. And so a lot of people would be like, oh, what's up with that? Aren't you lonely? But on the other hand, isn't that a lot of opportunity? I mean, to think about how many more acres we could be bringing diversity to that is sequestering carbon, that's creating solutions for this climate challenge, and that's all going to take people being part of that story. So
it's very interesting to me, the crossover. You know, nature is very efficient. It's very efficient. It's going to find the best way to do something, but sometimes multiple avenues of diversity, again, is the way that nature accomplishes that thing. So I know that there is a social parallel because we all bring different things, different seeds. I mean, lentils are from where? I believe they're from...
I don't know.
I want to say the Mesopotamian region. My father used to talk about
Fertile
them as a
Crescent.
because they were so high in nutrients, but they grew so well in the arid regions. There are many other seeds and fruits and vegetables that come from parts unknown that really bring something to the table, literally and figuratively. So, again, we're in Montana. You have diversity in your populace that you're introducing as well here with your interns, fresh blood, fresh thought. How do you do that?
Oh, it's been a fascinating journey.
That's a good question.
It's like, how do we do
We're
it?
still trying to figure that out.
That's part of the question we have in front of us. Is when we started the apprentice program in 2013, we really had a vision of young people coming, working with us over several years, us helping to support them launching an enterprise that could be symbiotic with ours or their own, and maybe we share equipment and labor, and because there's this tremendous growth in this next generation that's super excited about agriculture. But what we've discovered is that excitement is not necessarily on an at-scale farm that's very remote that has tractors, like big tractors. It's been a really interesting juxtaposition about what we want to do with our food system and how we steward many more acres of land. I mean, organic production in Montana is less than 0.5% of the cropland. So we have 18 million acres in the state of Montana under cropland, and less than 0.5% of that's actually certified organic.
All the way across the state, it was
Right.
just nothing but crop.
Right.
You're telling me 1%?
less than
less than
1.
1% of the cropland in
organic.
Montana is certified organic. So that's not including the rangeland, just the cropland. But, I think that sets up a really interesting question is the next generation that is really supportive of farmers markets and kind of the social piece around agriculture. That's so important so that people can start re-engaging with their food system. But at some level, 2 acres of vegetable production near an urban area is not going to help us really make the system changes that have to happen in agriculture in terms of land stewardship. So we're thinking about apprentices not just in terms of how do we grow new farmers, but how do we grow new land stewards. And it's really one of the most entrepreneurial things I think you could take on. I mean, you get to work outside, you get to work with spreadsheets, you get to think about nature, you get to help solve climate challenge in front of us. So how do we do all that? That's been a total learning journey as well in terms of what does it mean to host another person on your farm and help them build some skill sets. And we've established a really good partnership with Havre Coalition and their new agrarian program. And this year we have 2 apprentices, Ben's from Massachusetts, and Aubin is actually from France, and grew up on a farm and wants to convert his family's farm to organic in France. And then,
So he's going to leave you.
So he's going to leave
Doesn't that
us.
seem like
So that's kind of sad.
We're back in the same problem we've had to this point. Is we've had a lot of mostly younger people that are interested and come to visit. Some even come and work for a season. But there have only been 1 so far that stayed for more than a season. And it's, I think for the human-animal community is, even if you don't recognize it, you come to realize is a necessary piece, and to various extents depending on the individual. But there was once community here, and it's been depopulated. There are fewer people living on this land where we farm than have ever lived here, even before European settlement. There were more humans in native societies than there are now. And it's hard to wrap your head around. If you look at population demographics, we're on par with Siberia in terms of density of population. And while some of us like that, it's not really a healthy situation. So part of what we're trying to do is recreate that, but it takes it takes someone that's willing to be a pioneer, and that's a rare when you don't have to. If there are other places you can go where there are already a community of people.
Well, but I also think it's more than just the community of people. It's what is our system of agriculture here in the U.S. and how are we actually supporting the next generation to have success in that? Like, I went to school and became an engineer, and you go to school and you can get a job and you can have health insurance and a paycheck every 2 weeks and do things that are still really amazing and inspiring. Agriculture, you have to really want to do it.
it's not easy?
And starting at this scale, or the equipment alone. I mean, we worked for 20 years and had significant savings and really good credit, and so we were able to bring to bear resources and family support in a lot of ways to start our operation. Would have been fabulous to have been able to start in our 20s. Think how much more diversity and established our system would be now. But so we want to help enable other people to do that, because I think we have to find ways that there are career paths and entryways. And right now, there's a lot of places you can go intern or apprentice, and you can jump from one operation to another, but there's no career path into how do you actually get started. Like the acreage percent of organic in the U.S., I think there's less than 1% of the population that's actually making a living from production agriculture. And that's everybody, that's all production systems. So it's, how do we shift that?
I would say that you're talking, there's almost two different things in there. One of them is the transfer of institutional knowledge that's occurring. The average farmer's at 58, and we're dying out, and we're losing the knowledge that you can't get in school.
Right.
That's only get by tromping the fields for how many years on a farm and learning being raised with it. That's the experiential. You can't really transfer that easily, and so there's that overarching concept in the United States as a whole. And you both seem to be global oriented, but also very local. How many people want to stay here? So if your interns come and they learn and they go farm somewhere else, is that almost enough for you to make you feel like it's worthwhile, or do you only want them if they stay?
That's a topic we've discussed and come at from different positions, but I guess it's not that it's bad, it's not a failure, but my goal, at least, is to have people come and farm here. Not necessarily Havre, but at least in this, Northern Plains ecosystem, because I feel like this is where there's opportunity for them, and it's also where we really need to have more people engaged in agriculture. That's not to say that we don't need more in wherever, France or North Carolina or California, but I think there should be people like us in France and North Carolina and California that are teaching people how to farm there. I'm not sure how directly applicable what you're going to learn here is to managing a vegetable farm in the Central Valley, for instance.
Did your previous experience in farming help you here?
Yes. But it was a more similar circumstance than what most people are pursuing. And we've also had, which I guess I have to admit is a disappointment to me, people that have come and worked with us are going into, I don't know what you call it, support roles or nonprofits, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I understand the draw, and I think it's basically finding something that has a salary attached to it rather than taking on the risk of building a business from scratch. Because, we have to steward not only soil and people and their skills, but also this entrepreneurial spirit that it takes to start any kind of business, farm being just one example. And that seems to be pretty rare in our age, in our society. But we're hopeful. We've got a crop today
I have a slightly different opinion. I mean, I think it's challenging as it is for us as a farm to host new people every year and do the training every year. That is giant and something that we have to think more deeply about around what does it mean to mentor and how do we have other operations begin mentoring. I mean, because you can look at the average age of farmers and you can talk about the average age of landowners and then like who has succession plans and where's the next generation coming from, and they're not here. You're just going to get bigger and bigger operations. So we really need to think about that mechanism of teaching and sharing and hosting and what's the support for mentors. But I also think that there are not many of us that have the opportunity to actually grow food, and there may not be many of us in the future right away growing food. And I think if people come and experience and learn more about what this system of growing food actually is, whatever they do as they move out, they're going to carry that with them. Like we just had a young gentleman this last week who came probably 3 years ago to the farm, had a degree in biology, didn't want to be a farmer, so he came for a really short appointment to help us with soil testing. And he called me and he's like, hey, could you be a reference for my master's program application, because I really want to go into nutrition. And those 10 days I spent on your farm was life-changing for me. Like I had never seen that there was an opportunity to hook up food and cooking and growing food. And like, it was just really I mean, it made me feel good, like maybe we've made a difference in someone else's ability to see or think about the system changes that we have to have. And the system changes are going to be so great that it's going to take all of us. It's not like one silver bullet and we're suddenly going to have a lot more farmers and a lot more land under better stewardship. It's going to be a billion silver BBs, you know.
I would venture to guess that the cropping systems that you're experimenting with might be the same thing in the future. You might not see the immediate impact. You might say, yes, it's just a little bit more here, might be incremental change, but there could be something that you find that in the long term really makes a difference. And it didn't seem like much at the time to you, and it seemed like something a little fringish, but it fundamentally changed things. And I think that's the nature of our lives, isn't it? That we never know what we do that changes something.
Well,
in
and
the
I think
future.
that's part of the trick also is the skills that it takes to be a farmer. You have to commit to a place. You have to commit to, at least farming in the way we're doing it, you have to commit to investing in things that you're not totally sure the quarterly profit reporting cycle payoff does not come right away, right? Like, so this next generation, some of the skill sets we've seen, like their ability to think about risk and their ability to really commit to a place or think about community, like those are things that are really at a dichotomy with how we have seen farming and done our farm. And so what's the evolution of that to think about how farming might change and how we do farming might change?
This is a renting
kind of exciting.
generation and not a buying generation.
It's exciting to think about.
Is that an ability or a willingness?
Well,
I mean,
It's a difference in a mentality. And it seems in the same way that you're evolving on your farm, you're evolving back to something older, right? This is the way they may have done it 200 years ago because Havre hadn't come in and we hadn't pulled nitrogen out of the sky or out of the ground. And so it all goes in a little cycle, which is your whole concept of biodiversity.
but at the same time, too, it's not like we're just doing old school farming. I mean, it was funny, we had a neighbor that we were riding around with, and he said something to one of his older brothers, and it was like, wow, yeah, there, look, that's like how my grandfather farmed. We're talking about our farm. And I don't think it was meaning to be demeaning, but it was like, oh, like, look, there's better new technology. But like, what is technology, right? And how are we using it? And two things. Mother Nature is amazing technology if you pay attention to her. And secondly, like, isn't it amazing to be able to live in a place in a frontier county and have fiber optic internet where I can pull up the weather forecast? And like, no, like, oh, it's going to rain for 2 days. If I was up here homesteaded, I would have no clue.
we're not Luddite, but we also think there are side effects and implications of some of the technology that maybe are not worth the effort they supposedly save. And if it's really looking at nature, and is what you're doing emulative or enhancing to nature, or is it in opposition to what she would tell us to do? And if you're bucking that wisdom, then at least in the long term, you're fighting a losing game. And we just have to constantly ask ourselves, are we doing the right thing? I think that's more important than are we doing it right, are we doing the right thing?
For this place. Are we doing the right thing for this place and this farm individual? Like, every human grows up to be their own individual and their own creative capacities. And like every farm is that way too. I mean, every piece of land's a little different and has, different nooks and crannies and different soils and different needs and different ways to access it. And so the more you get to know that and build a relationship with it, the more you can really help. How do you evolve together?
When you both describe this, I just have to say it sounds like it's for the good of the universe conceptually on the surface, but really it's just smart. It sounds like you're just utilizing resources to their best capacity for the short and the long run. Is that?
Oh, we hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for for me, I mean, I have this longer, bigger vision of doing the right thing, but for us to be in business and start, you have to do the right thing at your place. I mean, that's where it starts, is doing the right thing at your place. And
Well, I think one of the things we struggle with is, we're in a culture that is, I would say, addicted to short term. And everything we're practicing is based on a commitment to long term. Even the idea of a crop rotation where, 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 7 or 2 out of 5 years, we don't even harvest the crop. We're turning that back in to enhance the soil. And that's hard to explain. In the other system, you can, go buy inputs to make it possible to harvest more. And yet we're trying to build up a system that is sustainable over the long term and regenerates itself. And that's just one example of where we see a conflict between the society we're in and its, as I said, addiction to short-term, quarterly profit cycles, or what am I going to do next year, versus thinking about, well, what's going to be here for the next generation. And I think the more we can be an example of and practice ourselves, focusing on the long term, the healthier we'll all be.
yeah, I mean, it's really about modeling the behaviors that we want to embody in agriculture. And that's tricky. It's almost like you're in this holding space of like stretched out between what it had been and like what we need to be doing. There's a tension there between shifting from a system that's really highly input dependent to one that's not, that's going to be more resilient to climate change. And how do you actually live in that space of tension until the overall system shifts enough?
But I would almost not specify resistant to climate change. I would say resistance to change, period. Because if you have security here in those ways, whether that be climate, economics, political, war, whatever happens, if you bank on being self-sufficient here in your own space, it makes everything stronger.
Right.
Correct?
That's a hard idea to sell these days, either to neighbors, politicians, or interested apprentice candidates. The long view is not in vogue. But anyhow, we're trying. We're committed to it.
So I need to make sure that I specifically get you both to describe your program. You have 3 different programs for your interns, correct? You have a 1 year, a 3. How does this work?
Yeah, so we've had 3, and only one of them has really taken off. So that's our new agrarian 8-month immersion opportunity, and we've been doing that in partnership with Havre Coalition. So a young person applies through Havre Coalition. There's a good screening process, and they'll come and spend 8 months with us. So that's basically a season from March to October. So you get to see the entire growing season and all the craziness that happens on that. Ideally, it's somebody that wants to really move into a career and a long-term place in agriculture, and then they could stay longer term. The second opportunity that we have is we worked with the state of Montana to actually stand up a registered apprenticeship program. So much like becoming a plumber or an electrician, there's an actual registered apprenticeship where you track work hours as well as classroom training. And that one we have yet to have anyone really ready to commit to go through that. We were pretty excited about that process, and
particularly with the veteran.
We had hoped that we could work with the veteran community to do that, because we had another project with National Center for Appropriate Technology and their Armed to Farm program. So theoretically, if there's an 8-month immersion candidate that would like to do further study in organic organic farming systems, that's an opportunity to move into another more rigorous, structured approach. And then the third opportunity we have is really just an internship. So we have found, as we try and grow out this whole career path of an agrarian, there's so many people that don't grow up in agriculture. They don't even know what it is. They don't even know how to think about, grain, lentils, what's that, big equipment. So our hope is we can flesh that program out a little more and have a shorter term exposure opportunity for folks that maybe are in between class in the summer session.
Well, we've had several of those.
And we actually have had several interns just to get them exposed to this and think about organic farming as a career, or how what they want to do in the future might relate. So
As the cost of land increases, come across the land, we see places that were empty 10 years ago and are big box stores and everything now. Do you think that there might be more interest in your program? Because it's not possible at some point to get into farming. It's just, you can't
Right.
afford too many land.
That's been our I guess hope or aspiration all along is we found a place here where land is available and affordable, and we haven't proven it yet, but we're fairly confident you can access land and make a living by managing it. And there aren't many places in this country where that's still possible, to start from scratch and do it, for all the reasons you suggested, among others. But is it going to make more people interested? I think that's an open question. It gets back to this community or lack thereof. I think we still believe once we get 2 or 3 people that stay with us and form a little nucleus, if you will, that it'll be much easier to attract the next 15. But we're still trying to, we're hopeful that the current crop will grow into that. But we've been at it for 5 years with apprentices, and
6. This is 6.
So far, they've been more like tumbleweeds than taprooted.
It's not all your crops take, do they?
Right. And it just takes patience, but it's frustrating to see them all elect to pursue other endeavors.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like us and subscribe, and tell your friends. That's how we keep going.
We want to thank Doug and Anna for having us out again today. And for more information about Doug and Anna and their stewardship program, please visit vilicusfarms.com. Is it Vilicus Farms? Vilicus Farms? It's kind of like an Alara. I don't know. Anyway, thanks again for listening. You have been listening to Agri-Culture with your host, Alara Bowman. Please tune in for more upcoming episodes from our travels. We'd also like to thank our producer, Michelle Council. I'm Rick Bowman, your behind-the-scenes editor. Until next time. This has been a presentation of Backyard Green Films Productions, all rights reserved, copyright 2019.